Do you want to know some common problems of your 2001 to 2007 range heavy-duty trucks, Chevy GMC, specifically with the 6-liter? So Chevy 2500, 3500, 6-liter common problems. Stay tuned if you want to know some more. We're going to talk about it and discuss those things. Here we go. All right, today we're going to discuss some common problems of the Vortec 6000. So we're going to talk about the engine, and then we're also going to talk about the truck that it's in. But first, we're going to talk about the engine, and there may be other things that are common problems, but I'm just going to speak from my personal experience. Right now, I own 2 vehicles. I own a PowerStroke 6.0, so F250. And I own a 2003 Chevy Suburban. And before this, a couple trucks before the vehicles I have now, I owned a 2002 Chevy, actually it was a GMC Sierra 2500 HD with the 6-liter. And so I had that for, I don't know, a year. And I put a good number of miles on it. I worked in landscaping business for a buddy of mine, and I pulled a landscaping trailer constantly with that. So I put some miles on it. I put some heavy miles on it, like in-town towing is what I was doing. So the things that I fixed on the truck that seemed to be a common issue. We're going to start with the water pump. I did replace the water pump. Chevy's water pumps are easy to tell when they need to be replaced because they start to have a drip, a pinhole leak in the bottom that they have designed into it when it's failing. So that was one of the problems that I have with the truck. It got hot. It wouldn't cool down. If I let it sit and idle, it would overheat. So, and I had that leak that was starting. So those are the reasons why I knew that was happening, because it wasn't cooling off the truck. And put a vehicle here, trying to get off the road. And it had the pinhole leak. So that was the first problem I had with it there that I wanted to talk about. Another common problem is a noise in the engine. So some people have said it was actually just a knock because of spacing issues and stuff like that in the engine. I also heard it described as lifter noise. That's what I thought it was, because the remedy I did for it was I put a solvent into the oil because someone had told me that there was carbon buildup on the lifters and they weren't getting lubed properly. So that's one thing I did, and that actually solved the problem significantly, the noise that I was hearing. So that seemed to have been my problem with the truck. The last problem with the engine specifically that I want to talk about, so we talked about the water pump, lifter noise, and actually speaking of noise, I apologize for the noise. I'm on a bumpy road right now. Hope you guys can hear me well. But the third problem that I ran into specifically with the engine was the knock sensors. You can run your truck without the knock sensors, but it doesn't run as efficiently. It's not recommended. When I bought the truck, what I believe happened was right before I bought it, the dealer I bought it from washed the truck and washed the engine bay, hosed down in the engine. So the design of where the knock sensor is sort of in the V of the engine. So you have the intake manifold above it, and then you have the trough there in between the cylinders. And the way it's designed, there is a gap on the front and back underneath the intake manifold, which is all fine and good, but then the knock sensors are in that trough and then in a hole that is not very well sealed. It has a little boot there that covers the top of the hole where the wire goes down to the sensor, but it's just not a very good setup. That boot doesn't seal it very well, so water gets down in there and ruins the sensor, and that's what happened to me. And I'm pretty sure it was because the dealer washed the engine right before I bought it. So that was actually the very first thing I fixed on the truck, was that problem, was the knock sensors. There are 2 of them in there, and what you do is you replace both of them, and then you take that boot and you actually put RTV silicone around the outside of that boot and seal it to the trough there, so that no water can get in it again. And that normally solves the problem. So that is the third thing that I wanted to talk about the engine specifically. Now we're going to move on to the body itself. So that era of vehicle had a number of problems. I guess I can't say body because it's drivetrain also. So we'll start with the other drivetrain issue. A very common problem that these trucks had. My truck had it, and another truck that I recently worked on, I serviced, had the same problem. So what happens, this is specifically about the transfer case. In the transfer case, you sort of have a, I don't know, an oval shape, two-dimensional, when you look at it two-dimensional, and on an angle downward. I guess you can't see my hand there, so that was useless. But the oil sits in the bottom, and you have gears and bearings in the top that have to get lubricated. So you need an oil pump to pump the oil, the automatic transmission fluid, from the bottom to the top. So they designed the transfer case, obviously, to have that. And the way it's designed, it has this housing around it that sits in grooves in the side, the front, well, actually, it's the rear cover of the transfer case. But the way it was designed was the part that sits in the grooves is actually sort of sharp. Like it's thinner metal, and it's placed in such a way that it has a little bit of play. And over time, as you drive the truck, it eventually wears a hole, a pinhole in the side of the transfer case. And it's not something that you can diagnose because you see a puddle on the ground in your driveway. It's actually, it only leaks when you're driving because it's up there in the top of the transfer case above the oil level at idle, or at park. So you can't diagnose it by that. But you will start to see oil buildup on the transfer case, and it leaks out while you're driving because the pinhole is so small. Usually, when it starts to leak, that you can't tell. When I was servicing that truck that I just talked about, I was servicing it, and I noticed that the oil, I put 2.5 quarts of ATF in there. I'm like, there's got to be a problem. And I had researched this when I owned my own truck, like this, with that transfer case, and I had learned all this stuff. So I'm like, I bet it's got that problem. And I knew from seeing pictures of the problem and from my own transfer case, I knew where the problem always was. So I rubbed my finger over the spot that I thought it would be. And when I did, a chunk of old deteriorated silicone came off and revealed a pea-sized hole in the side of the transfer case. And that leaks out, and eventually your bearings and such wear out and your transfer case is destroyed. So that's a common problem, and that's the expensive fix. To rebuild the transfer case or to buy a new one. Plus you need to, they sell that bracket in a different form that no longer has that problem. So you have to replace a good good amount of things and dish out a good chunk of change to fix that problem. So that's the first thing, non-engine, and then a couple more minor things that, you know, they're things that a lot of vehicles have problems with. So one was the upper control arm. So it's actually the upper ball joint that is the problem that goes out. Common problem, not too hard of a fix. You end up having to go out and get an alignment afterward to solve the problem, but that's pretty easily fixed. And then I think I had one more. Let's see. What else did I replace? The wheel bearings. But that's just a common problem on vehicles anyway. But my truck only had 160,000 miles. No, 150,000 miles on it. And the wheel bearings, front wheel bearings went out. So those are just a few things that, from my experience with these trucks, goes wrong. So, number one was the water pump, and then the lifters having lots of slop and noise. Also, the NOx sensor. So those are the things in the engine. And then the transfer case develops a bad leak and a hole in the side, and the upper control arms, the upper ball joints go out. So I hope this was informative, it was helpful, that maybe if you're buying one of these trucks, it's not to scare you away. These are good trucks, they're powerful, they drive well, they don't get good fuel economy, but they're very good trucks. I don't want to steer you away, I just want to give people a heads up about what you might have to deal with. So again, I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. If this was helpful and you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to have more of these videos to watch, please subscribe. I also have a Ford F-250 with Power Stroke that I've been doing some sort of a series on. If you want to keep up with that, please subscribe. Also, I would love to hear about your 6-liter Chevy truck, 6-liter Vortec. Tell me about your common problems. What happened to your truck? What happened to your engine? Just to give us some more insights, to give some more helpful information for a buyer of this truck. Again, thanks for watching. Have a good day.